Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Eighth Wall live learning session. This is our webinar series where we invite our developer community to come join us for an interactive session of tips and tricks related to web AR development using Eighth Wall. So if this is your first time here, here's how these sessions work, and welcome. First, we'll talk about what's new at Eighth Wall. Then we're going to dive into a relevant demo or topic, and finally open things up for live Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please enter them using the Zoom Q&A window. This session is being recorded and it will be posted to YouTube and our website after the session is over. But before we jump into today's content, a couple of quick introductions. My name is Tony Tamarchio and I'm the Director of Technical Operations here at Eighth Wall. And once again, I'm joined by Rigel Benton. Rigel is our lead product designer. Most of you, or many of you, have probably seen us on our developer Slack channel, but if you aren't a member, I strongly suggest you sign up. You can do so at eighthwall.com/Slack. There are now almost 4,000 members in the Slack channel, and it's a really great place to go to ask questions, to interact with other Eighth Wall developers, to share things that you've created, and so on. Between the two of us, we've worked with thousands of web AR developers. So the goal of these sessions is really to pass along some of the tips and tricks we've learned along the way. We really value developer input. So if you have any feedback or feature requests or issues, please reach out to us at any time. And with that, I'd like to start today's live learning session by turning things over to Rigel. Rigel is going to be talking about some recent updates from the team and then dive into our main topic. And the topic of the day is advanced cloud editor development techniques. So with that, Rigel, I'm going to turn things over to you, and why don't we jump right in?
Great, thanks, Tony. Hi, everybody. So I'm excited today to demo a few things we haven't announced yet that we've added to Cloud Editor. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Great, okay, cool. All right, so I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the Eighth Wall Playground for a moment, because what I'm going to be doing today is walking through a bunch of these new Cloud Editor features as we kind of navigate these newer projects in the playground. So we can kind of learn about some of the newer projects while also learning about some of the new features. So to begin, I wanted to show a brand new project we just added last Friday called Video Material on Mesh, which is pretty cool. It basically allows you to apply video materials to imported 3D objects in a couple of different ways. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up my project in Cloud Editor that I've cloned ahead of time. And then I'm going to plug my phone in here so I can share my screen. All right. Cool. All right, so we can see my screen now. And we can reload the page. Okay, so first thing is you'll see whenever the camera opens up, you've got two 3D objects in here. We've got this chair, which has a video material applied to the whole object. And then over here, we've got a TV, which is only applying a video material to just one mesh that's, a sub mesh within the larger model. And so in our project, if we go to video texture component, JS, you can see how this works. And the really fun thing about these components is they can be really granular, like in the case of the TV, where we're actually selecting a very particular part of the TV by traversing the mesh, and then and then applying that video material to that particular submesh. Or it can be something as simple as the video texture component in here, where all we have to do is just import our GLTF model and then link a video to it, and then it'll literally just grab every material that has a map in that object, and we'll replace that map with the video that you've specified. So so it's a lot of fun just swapping in and out videos onto 3D models and what have you. But I wanted to show one of the first features that we just added to the Cloud Editor, which is asset information. So now whenever you click on any of your assets, it doesn't matter what type of asset they are, you're going to get new information about that asset. So in the TV, like it's a GLB, so we're surfacing both the size of the model as well as the number of triangles. So, so that's really helpful at a glance, just from the cloud editor, to understand, how big your model is. Download size is of course very important when it comes to WebAR, making sure that you've got fast load times, but also making sure that your geometry isn't getting out of control. And so this is a nice way of checking on that. But this doesn't stop there. It also works with images. So here I have a particularly large image. This is like 13 megabytes. So I'm glad I checked ahead of time. It's also giving me back the dimensions of this image. This works for videos, and for videos, we're also getting the duration. So we know how long the video is, we know its dimensions, its size, audio files, kind of goes on and on. This also includes support for bundles. So you have an idea of how large an HCAP is when you import it, or any other kind of other asset bundle you might use, like a font or something like that. So that's the first thing I wanted to showcase. That's going to be that's actually live currently. So anyone that wants to use that can go off and do that right now in the projects they already have. The next thing I wanted to show was another new feature that a lot of people are really excited about on the team, which is code search. So now this magnifying lens up here, it's been changed from the go to file. Now if you click this, it is full code search. So as I type, it's finding within my project all the different files that have strings that match what I'm typing. And it does this every keystroke. And then you can go through here and then you can just hit enter on one. It'll take you not just to the line, but actually the part of the line where the string match was found. And so this is a really quick way to jump between different files, right? But also finding what you're looking for, even in something that's a really, really big project. So, there's a shortcut here that I keep clicking, which is this Command-Shift-F, but, of course, it'll display like the Windows shortcut if you're on a Windows PC. But one thing I wanted to try here was, just finding the color really quickly in my CSS of this text. And then of course we can just go ahead and change that. So this is pretty easy to do and to navigate. It's really fast. So really excited about code search. That's also live. So anyone who wants to go ahead and try that out, just go and try that. And then a little bit more about this project. So you can see, so now I've changed the color of my text. I can change this, or sorry, I can tap this button, and what this add video button does is it actually allows me to either record from a camera or upload a file. And what else I'll do, this is part of the video component on the TV, is I'll actually take that, and then now we've applied that new video as the input for our video texture here. So that's pretty cool. And what you might also notice is, so as I change it to files and I choose something like the same video that's on the chair, for instance, you might also notice that this is running real-time reflections. So on the screen, right, you can see my fingers reflect back, and we got the video material going. So really cool effect there. But it's even more fun whenever you throw in our media recorder. So now I'm recording a video within my experience, right? And I can download that. So right now it's transcoding to MP4 so that when I download it, I can then re-upload it all within my scene. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply that. Now we have this TV Inception experience going on here. So yeah, so that project's live on the playground. Go check that out. It's a lot of fun to play with, like I had said. So the next thing I want to talk about is sort of a really big feature that we just added that won't go live until tomorrow, but I want to show it off today, which is debug mode. And so I'm going to go over to, this is the portal project, the demo, not the sample project, but the actual demo that we released, along with all of our, portal coverage a few weeks ago. And so inside of here, we have both the portal, but also the wormhole project. So I'm going to show off right now this debug mode running on our wormhole project. So if I go up here and I scan the preview QR code, you can see this in action. So there's two places that debug mode will be activated once it's live tomorrow. For now, you can see it here as a checkbox within my console tied to my particular device. But when this goes live, you'll also have a debug mode toggle available at the preview code. So you can decide as soon as you preview it, whether you want this to be on or off. If I turn it on here, you'll notice all this new stuff comes on, right? So I'll talk about the bottom in a moment, but for this project, I really wanted to draw everyone's attention to the top left corner here, where we have a bunch of new stats running. So some of these might seem pretty self-explanatory. We have a few extras in there that are pretty helpful. This can be toggled. So if you just tap it, it will toggle small or big. And then, actually, I just placed a wormhole here. I'll just reload the page real quick because I wanted to talk about that. So at the top right, we've got at the top left, we have the frames per second. We have the triangle count. This triangle count is updating within the camera frustum every frame. So this isn't just the total triangles in your scene, though right now 12 corresponds to this shadow plane that we have. You can't see right now, but it's still being rendered. If I tap and I place the first portal, you'll see that immediately updated 37,000 tries, right? Draw calls, same thing, right? It's showing you the number of times that a draw is called each frame to the GPU. So here we have, if we pan away, you can see that drops as well as the try count. And then as soon as we come back, you can see that increases again. If I place a second portal, kind of back here, you can see that count just increased again. So that's really helpful to understand kind of like where you're at in your project. And the triangle count, you notice that it's turning red. So we have these kind of alarms set that like reach certain thresholds, and they're more just like suggestions that like maybe it's getting a little high, or in the frame rate here, I can screen sharing, I'm doing a lot of things, it's been running for a while. Maybe the frame rate's a little low. So it's a nice way to kind of keep tabs on all of the different stats happening in your scene, right? So we have the total textures that are loaded in the scene currently. And then this text max value is the maximum dimension of the largest texture in the scene. So this is where we're iterating through all of the different models that you have loaded, all of their materials, and then we're figuring out, okay, of all the materials that have maps, what is the largest dimension of the largest map? And this is really helpful for figuring out like, oh, did I accidentally let like an 8K texture slip in there? And that's why my frame rate is suffering right now, right? So you have this always at a glance, or maybe it's not a power of 2 and there's a way to optimize there. Shaders, this is the number of shaders compiled in the scene. Geometries, this is the total number of geometries you have in your scene. That's different than meshes, which are composed of both a geometry and a material. And then entities, so this is A-frame specific, right? And this is the number of entities you have. So as I throw rocks here, you can see that these counts increment. So I have 31, 32 entities. And then I'm also increasing the number of geometries because I'm not doing any kind of geometry instancing. So it's loading this every time. So this is another opportunity to like see these things and figure out new ways of optimizing your scene just by looking at these numbers. And the last value is models. And this corresponds to the total size in megabytes of all of your A asset items in A assets. So that's like, A-frame specific again, but basically as your scene loads all those 3D models that are inside your A assets, it's accumulating their size. And those are usually the largest things you have in your scene. So it's just a nice kind of at a glance understanding of how big your scene is. Now this doesn't apply to things that are dynamically loaded. So if you're loading new objects as you go, that's not the case. It's more of a representation of your load time. And like I said, you can collapse that. And then the last thing I want to point to on this scene is going to be up here. And this is your version of XR. So this is the 8th wall engine version. So this is really helpful whenever you just want to understand, maybe what your project's on, but also it's helpful for us because then, if we ask you, oh, you're having an issue with tracking or something related to that, what version is it? It's really clear, whenever you have debug mode on, what version that is. And then below, this is going to be the version of your renderer. So in this case, we're using A-frame, so it's giving us the A-frame version number. Again, helpful for understanding, debugging various things that might be specific to different renderers. So then, I can just kind of turn this off for a second. We're going to move on to the next project. So this is our PLY loader project, also known as the point cloud object. So I'll go ahead and scan this because there's an extra stat. There's actually two that were hidden because our scene didn't include any of these. So we didn't want to have just 0 rendered every time you went to the page if this didn't apply to your project. So in the case of point clouds, if I turn debug mode on here, we can see in the top left, we actually have points now. So these are, like I said, point cloud objects. So there's actually no triangles in this scene. It's all just points in 3D space. And you see I can change the point size in here. And then, I can even change out the model. I've got like a Christmas tree in here, but yeah. And then of course the points, they update the same way as the try count. So as you move through the space, you load new objects. That's going to be represented each frame, the number of points that are being loaded. So, so that's pretty cool. But also in this project, I kind of want to talk about the bottom bar, right? So particularly the console. So what's cool is now that we have debug mode on, we can actually go through and see at the bottom all of the console logs for this page on top of our actual scene. So this is particularly helpful when you begin doing things like walking away from the computer, right? Or you want to load this someplace else, right? Maybe you're not physically located near your computer, or just at a glance, understanding as you're using it, maybe logs that are being fed back to you about like the state of what's going on. And so, having this kind of mobile console, beginning to bring, right, this like the console experience from the cloud editor onto the device can really supercharge development here. So, so I have it where every time I change the point size, it's going to give us the new point scale values. And you'll notice that like as we go, I can scroll right all the way back to the beginning of when my console logs began, and I can come down. And so if I change something, it'll actually jump you as soon as it gets a new log. It'll jump you to the bottom, so you're always on the latest. And then, but it doesn't just do logs. We can also do errors and warnings. And so if I go into my code here, and down here is where I'm setting my console log. If I do like a console warn, and I'm like, warning, save and build. So now every time I change my slider again, it's going to give me not just the scale value of the point, but it's also going to give me this just warning message. So you can see how that's rendered. So now I change it. So here we go. We got warning, warning, warning. And then finally, just as a quick reminder of the cloud editor console, we can even send eval values, to our scene, right, directly from here. So if I want to try like a console error, it'd be like error, send that. Well, then now you can see here on my phone, it's received that that error from the cloud editor console. So, so that's going to be really helpful. And I think the console is gonna save a lot of people some grief whenever they're seeing errors or warnings as they're using it, but maybe didn't catch it on their computer. So, so that's that one. And then the other thing about this project, I just wanted to surface real quick. We're talking about, the different like assets. So this is actually an other asset bundle. So this is something that an extension that we don't have a previewer for. And so if you just tried to upload this normally, then we'd give you some kind of error like, oh, this isn't a supported file extension. But as you know, if you go into assets, new asset bundle, other, you can drop any file type you want in here and create an asset bundle that you can then reference and bring into your project. And so even in this case, right, we have this sort of PLY file, which is not something we can preview, but it is something we can still surface the bundle size for. So again, really helpful to understand just how large your assets are in your scene. And and so you can take a look at that here. All right, so moving on. So next we have another new project in the project library called Joystick Movement. And this one is a lot of fun to play with. Basically, we have a virtual joystick that's on screen, and you can drag it around and move this character across a surface. So here's our little robot buddy, and then we can run him around. And this scene in particular has something wrong. So it might become apparent as soon as we begin moving that he's sliding along the ground, right? So, typically we'd look at that and be like, oh no, like what's happened? My tracking must be off, or I have a reflective surface or something. Actually, no, he's actually below the ground. So we're tracking the ground perfectly fine. We just can't see where his feet are attached to because they're actually below the surface that's detected here. So if we go into our actions panel, right, we can actually click this show detected surface, and this will apply a plane at the detected Y0 height from eighth wall, the engine, and you can just toggle this on and off, and it becomes immediately apparent that like, oh yeah, he actually is, like the ground's tracking just fine. It's just that he's below zero here. So here's something that we can easily fix, right? I can just change my position back to 0, and he's good to go. And so if I hit this, it will reload and he'll be fine. But that's just one way to determine this, right? I didn't actually have to go back in my cloud editor and change this because now he looks great, but he's still missing that shadow that would help visually understand the relationship between the object's position and where the ground is. And so instead of actually needing to go into my cloud editor and like make a modification and kick off a save and build, instead I can go and actually open my A-frame inspector directly from my device. So this has been, if you used the A-frame inspector before, this is a condensed version of it that's meant to fit on a phone screen and be used this way. So, so we've made some modifications visually, and we're continuing to add new things to this and make it easier to use. But now I can actually see my scene, and it's paused right now, so I can make modifications. And so if I go in to my character and I actually add a shadow component, I come back, it's going to resume, and then boom, now I've got a ground shadow on my from my character. So it's now I just want to remind everyone it's an inspector. So these changes aren't being sent back into your cloud editor, but they are a really great way of making quick modifications just to test out. And so now it's like, all right, yeah, I like the shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. But it doesn't end there because it isn't just something that you can make modifications to. You can go pretty far with this using the inspector. So just as a demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and open my inspector again, and I can see my scene. I mean, I can even delete elements, I can nest them, but I'm going to create a new one just to show you how this works. So I've created a new entity in my scene, and then now I'm going to add some geometry. All right, and then I'm going to make this, you can select from all these different things. I'm going to sphere. And then next, I'm going to make a material for it. And then in my material, you can change any of these things. I'm just going to go into my source, and I'm going to load a texture that already exists in A-frame, earth. Load the texture. There we go. All right, so I've got my earth texture on it. And then now I'm going to go ahead and position this kind of floating above the ground at 1, and then I'm going to add a shadow, and then like, what do we got? What do we have here? So resume it, I hit my recenter button. So you notice like I'd been shifting my phone while it was paused. So you have to wait that we have that really handy recenter button down here now. So it resets the tracking and recenters the camera to its original position. And then now we have this this sphere with like a globe, right, in our scene. But I'm not done yet, because what I want to do next is actually make this interactive. So I can do that by either, like let's say I want to like add some XR extras components to it, right? So I can do XR extras, pinch scale, right? And then now, as soon as it comes back, now I can actually rescale it. So I can, we can add all kinds of components, any component that's already loaded, either from A-frame and memory, components we've added to the scene as part of, it's like we lost my video. Okay, so like I said, components that are added from the scene, you've added yourself, or anything that we have in the XR Extras library that you just want to go ahead and add to it, you can do that too. So, so the inspector is really powerful. Really excited to be able to manipulate my scene on device, all within this new debug mode. And then the last thing I wanted to show is just that we have a few more kind of eighth wall related things in here. So we have the camera. So if you're trying to understand like where my camera is and how and which direction it's looking, you have this available anytime to just tap on that tab. This again is helpful when you're debugging and you're trying to determine like, oh, like my scene isn't rendering. Well, then you find out that your camera is actually like off by like a 90 degrees. And so this could be really helpful for just quickly understanding that. And then, you can kind of see down here in the bottom right, we have this, this minimize toggle that I was messing with earlier. So if you do have elements on screen that, that maybe these debug mode elements are like obscuring, then, you can always like tap on these things and hide them or make them smaller. And then of course, at any moment, you don't need to reload your page or anything like that. You can just toggle your debug mode on and off from this cloud editor panel. And so with that, I have two more projects I just wanted to show for fun that are new. So the first is our Three.js Gummy transmission project. So this one is so much fun. So Three.js R1 3.1 just launched, and it added support for GLTF extensions, including transmission, which is a really cool one that like allows you to extentuate like it adds like refractive properties to like glass-like objects. And so, so I had the idea of like kind of doing this, applying this to a gummy bear. And then there's a little bit of reconfiguring in this project with the way that our render pipeline works to allow for this, so that like we actually have the texture by the time it's needed in order for the transmission properties to come through. But it can create this really cool effect of like really looking like a juicy gummy bear there as I pass my fingers back and forth through it. And the other cool thing is you can actually see the other the opaque gummy bear through that. And so, but that's not all, because of course we have real-time reflections running on the outside of the gummy bear while all this is happening. So it just really adds to that gummy aesthetic. Okay, so that's a cool one. That's available now. You can go ahead and clone that, start messing with that. And then the other one I wanted to show was the swap camera project. So this one is a really popular format for an AR experience where you want to have both face tracking and world tracking. And so this pairs a hologram with like some face paint, kind of like a soccer experience. And so here's like your sort of typical hologram, interface, right? We can play, we can pause. But then also, if I hit this button to flip the camera around, it will fade to black, or it'll cut, and then it'll fade from black. And then now you can see my soccer face paint on a face effect, and then I can just swap right back. And now we have, the tap to place hologram experience again. So if you're looking to combine face effects with world tracking, you can go in and grab these components, these assets, and just really make it easy, to swap around and include both features in the same project. So that was sort of the overview of all the different new features that we've added to Cloud Editor. And as a reminder, both code search and asset information, those are both live right now. And then tomorrow we're going to launch the mobile debug mode. And if there's any stats that are missing that you might want to, that you really want and you want rendered there, feel free to shoot us a suggestion on the feature request channel on Slack. And we'd love to continue to add to this and help make your development experience even better than it already is. So with that, I'll send it back to Tony and we can open up to Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rigel. Lots of exciting new updates from the team, especially related to Cloud Editor. And thanks for sharing all the new sample projects as well.